Nobody yelled at me. Nobody blocked me. Nobody even had the courage to tell me something was wrong. They just kept making plans, going out, celebrating birthdays, taking trips, posting photos, laughing in group chats without me. And that kind of pain is brutal, because when no one explains why you were left out, you start creating your own answers. Maybe I was too much. Maybe I got weird. Maybe they were tired of me. Maybe everyone knew something about me except me. And that's the cruelest part of silent exclusion. It doesn't just hurt your belonging. It starts attacking your reality. Before we get into this, tell me in the comments, have you ever been quietly excluded from a group without anyone explaining why? Have you ever watched the invitation stop, the group chat go quiet, the energy shift, and still had no real answer for what happened? And while you're there, tell me where you're watching from. I always love seeing where you all are and how these stories resonate with women in so many different places. If this topic already hit something deep in you, stay with me until the end, because today we're talking about one of the most painful kinds of social rejection, the kind that happens in silence, while everyone acts like nothing is wrong. There is a very particular kind of pain that comes from being excluded without explanation. Not from a fight, not from a direct rejection, not from someone saying, "We don't want you here anymore," but from the slow realization that the group is still moving, just without you. They still go out. They still celebrate. They still make plans. They still text each other. They still post pictures together. They still share inside jokes. And somehow, little by little, you stop being included in all of it. That kind of experience can be deeply destabilizing because it denies you something basic: clarity. When someone openly rejects you, it hurts. But at least you know where you stand. With silent exclusion, you don't get that. You get distance without language. You get omission without explanation. You get left out while everyone keeps acting normal. And because no one names what's happening, you become the person left alone to investigate your own rejection. That's what makes it so psychologically brutal. You start replaying conversations. You start reviewing old texts. You start wondering if you said something wrong, missed some hidden signal, became annoying, difficult, needy, too quiet, too loud, too emotional, too distant, too something. You start looking at their photos, their stories, their captions, trying to decode whether the exclusion is accidental or intentional. And meanwhile, because nobody says anything directly, you may even start feeling ridiculous for being hurt. Like, maybe you're overeating things. Maybe they've just been busy. Maybe you're being dramatic. Maybe adult friendships are just like this. But your body knows when something has shifted. Your body knows what it feels like to no longer be wanted in a space that once felt open to you. Your body knows what it feels like to watch belonging disappear in real time. Your body knows what it feels like when everyone else got the memo, except you. And that's what I want to talk about today. Because a lot of women have experienced this exact kind of pain, and many of them still minimize it because no one ever gave them permission to call it what it was. Exclusion hurts. Silent exclusion hurts even more. And being shut out without explanation can make you question not only your relationships, but your own NSE of reality. Let's imagine Alyssa's story. Alyssa had a group of friends she'd been close to for years. They weren't just casual friends. This was the group. Birthday dinners, holiday parties, girls' trips, Sunday brunches, random weeknight drinks, long group chats full of memes, voice notes, complaints about work, stories about dating, all of it. These were the women she assumed would be in her life for a long time. For years, everything felt natural. She didn't have to wonder if she belonged. She just did. Then slowly, something began to shift. At first it was so subtle she almost dismissed it. A group dinner happened, and she only found out because someone posted a photo the next day. She thought, okay, maybe it was last minute. Then a birthday gathering happened, and again, she saw it afterward online. A few days later, she noticed people in the group chat referencing something they had all done together, something she had never even heard about. She didn't say anything at first. She told herself they were probably busy. Maybe it had been spontaneous. Maybe people assumed she couldn't make it. Maybe she was overthinking. But then it kept happening. Invitations became less frequent. Responses got shorter. Plans seemed to happen around her, not with her. She'd post something and get silence, then see those same women active under each other's posts. She'd text someone privately and get a vague response hours later, then open Instagram and see they were all together at brunch. And that's when the confusion really set in, because nobody had actually done anything direct. No one said she was out. No one confronted her. No one named a problem. No one gave her a reason. They just slowly moved the circle without her. And the worst part was that when Alyssa did try to bring it up, the answers made everything even more disorienting. One friend said, "Oh my God, it was super last minute." Another said, "You've been kind of distant too." Another said, "It's not that deep. We just assumed you were busy." But the pattern was too consistent to ignore. This wasn't one missed invite. It wasn't one scheduling issue. It was the slow erasure of her presence. She started noticing little things that used to feel normal but now felt loaded. Someone would say, "We should all do something soon," and then never include her when it actually happened. Someone would post a photo dump with everybody tagged except her, because she hadn't been there. They'd laugh about a shared memory she had no part in. They'd say, "You should have come," as if she had chosen not to, even though nobody had invited her. That phrase especially started to hurt. "You should have come," as if she had opted out of something she was never offered. As if the exclusion were somehow mutual. As if she had abandoned the group instead of being slowly cut out of it. And because there was never one big dramatic moment, Alyssa became obsessed with trying to make it make sense. She replayed old interactions in her head, wondered if she had offended someone, thought about whether she'd become boring, awkward, too anxious, too unavailable, too intense. She even started comparing herself more harshly to the others. Maybe they were more fun, prettier, more socially fluid, easier to be around. That is what silent exclusion does. It doesn't just leave you out of dinner. It leaves you alone with your own worst interpretations. And after enough time, Alyssa stopped checking the group chat with hope and started checking it with dread. She stopped opening Instagram casually because she never knew when she'd be hit with another reminder that life was still happening for everyone else, just not with her. And what made it all so much worse was that no one seemed willing to be honest. No one gave her the dignity of the truth. They just let her feel the rejection without ever naming it. So, why does this hurt so much? Because when exclusion happens without explanation, the pain doesn't stay in one place. It spreads. It hurts your sense of belonging, yes. But it also attacks your self-trust, your social confidence, your emotional stability, and even your ability to read reality clearly. When someone directly says, "This isn't working," painful as that is, your mind has something to work with. There is language. There is shape. There is a line you can see. But silent exclusion gives you none of that. It gives you fragments. A missed invite. A delayed response. A brunch photo. A group trip you didn't know about. A birthday dinner you found out about later. A shift in tone that nobody acknowledges. And because the evidence comes in pieces, your mind tries desperately to assemble a story. But since no one will confirm the truth, you're left trying to solve an emotional puzzle with missing pieces. That's why women in this position so often become their own detectives. They search for clues. They analyze texts. They compare who got invited and who didn't. They go back through conversations trying to find the exact point where something changed. They look for a cause because the human mind struggles deeply with rejection that has no stated reason. And the longer the silence goes on, the more self-blame fills the gap. Maybe I talked too much. Maybe I withdrew too much. Maybe I made it hard for people to love me. Maybe they just got tired of me. This is one of the cruelest things about social exclusion. When no one names what happened, the excluded person usually turns inward and fills the silence with accusations against herself. And that is not accidental in its impact. Because silent exclusion allows everyone else to avoid discomfort. No one has to be the bad guy. No one has to have the awkward conversation. No one has to own the choice. The group keeps its comfort. The excluded person carries the confusion. That imbalance matters. They get to keep the social ease. You get the emotional aftermath. And in group dynamics, this often gets even uglier because people hide behind collective ambiguity. Nobody individually says, "I chose to exclude you." Instead, everyone lets the exclusion happen through drift, omission, assumption, and group momentum. That's why the person being left out often can't even tell where to direct her pain. There isn't one obvious villain. There's just a whole circle of people quietly agreeing that your absence is acceptable. And that kind of rejection can make a woman feel crazy, because it's real enough to hurt, but vague enough to be denied. If she brings it up, she risks sounding needy, dramatic, or paranoid. If she stays quiet, the exclusion continues. If she asks for honesty, she often gets vagueness. If she pretends she doesn't care, she ends up carrying all that pain alone. This is why silent exclusion is so psychologically destabilizing. It turns the excluded person into the one who has to both suffer and decode. It gives her no clear wound to point to, while still asking her body to absorb the impact of being unwanted. And let's be honest, in American social culture, where image, ease, and no drama are often treated like moral virtues, this gets even harder to name. People would often rather quietly phase someone out than tell the truth. They call it maturity, space, or just life happening. But that doesn't erase the impact on the person being erased. Because whether the group meant to wound you or not, your nervous system still registers the same thing. I am no longer included. I am no longer wanted in the same way. And no one is willing to tell me why. Hat hurts. Deeply. And now we get to the part that does the most damage. What this kind of exclusion does inside you. Because being left out without explanation doesn't just hurt your feelings. It can start changing the way you see yourself. Alyssa didn't just feel sad. She felt destabilized. She started questioning her instincts, questioning her memory, questioning her worth, questioning whether she had made up the whole thing, questioning whether she was somehow harder to love than other women. And when that kind of self-questioning goes on for long enough, something starts happening inside you that is much bigger than one group of friends. Your whole social self begins to shift. You become more cautious, more self-monitoring, more alert, more likely to interpret every delayed text, every awkward pause, every vague plan as a sign that you are about to be left out again. That is the part people don't talk about enough. Silent exclusion doesn't just break one bond. It can quietly retrain your nervous system to expect rejection without warning. Alyssa began hesitating before reaching out to people. She became hyper-aware of whether she was being annoying. She felt a weird shame around wanting to be included, as if the desire for belonging itself were embarrassing. She started acting more detached than she really was, because wanting connection no longer felt safe. She also started shrinking in social spaces. She shared less, asked for less, expected less, showed up with less ease. Because once you've been left out and no one has had the courage to explain why, your mind starts trying to prevent it from happening again. Maybe if I take up less space, it won't happen. Maybe if I'm easier, cooler, lower maintenance, it won't happen. Maybe if I stop expecting people to include me, it won't hurt as much. And that is where the damage becomes deeply personal. The exclusion starts outside of you. But if you're not careful, it starts rewriting you from the inside. Alyssa noticed she was no longer casually excited around people. She would check social media with a mix of curiosity and fear. She would mentally prepare herself for disappointment. She would tell herself she didn't care, then feel crushed when she saw everyone together again. She would ask less direct questions because she was afraid of sounding needy. And all of that left her feeling lonelier than the actual exclusion alone ever could. Because now she wasn't only missing the group, she was starting to lose access to her own natural openness. And this is what I want to say clearly to anyone living through something like this. Your pain makes sense. You are not dramatic for being hurt by exclusion. You are not childish for caring that you were left out. You are not weak for wanting honesty. And you are not imagining things just because nobody had the courage to say them out loud. Your body knows when belonging has been withdrawn. Your body knows when the room changed. Your body knows when everyone else got to stay inside the circle and you didn't. And wanting an explanation is not desperation. It is dignity. The problem is that not everyone is capable of giving that dignity. Some people would rather protect the group atmosphere than tell one person the truth. Some people would rather keep things vague than risk being uncomfortable. Some people would rather let you wonder than take responsibility for what they've chosen. That is not your failure. And the fact that they chose silence does not mean your pain is invalid. It means they chose comfort over courage. You do not have to call it nothing just because they refuse to call it something. You do not have to act unbothered just because they made your exclusion look subtle. And you do not have to keep chasing people who are comfortable watching you slowly realize you are no longer included. That kind of pain leaves marks. But it can also leave clarity. Because once you stop begging the silence to explain itself, you begin to see something important. Being left out hurts, yes. But staying where your absence costs them not. Hing hurts even more. So, I want to close this episode with one very clear thought. Being excluded without explanation is its own kind of emotional violence. Not because every missed invite is malicious. Not because every group shift is some coordinated act of cruelty. But because when a pattern becomes consistent and no one is willing to name it, the excluded person is forced to carry both the rejection and the confusion. And that is too much for one nervous system to hold alone. If people stop inviting you, stop including you, stop reaching for you, keep making memories without you, and then act like nothing happened, that matters. If you are always the one finding out later, seeing it online, hearing about it secondhand, or piecing things together from silence, that matters. If no one gives you the dignity of honesty, and you're left wondering what you did wrong, that matters. The absence of explanation does not make the pain smaller. In many ways, it makes it harder to heal. Because clarity gives pain a shape. Silence makes it spread. And I know part of what makes this so hard is that you may still want to believe it was accidental. You may still want to give people the benefit of the doubt. You may still feel embarrassed for caring this much. But caring about belonging is not pathetic. It is human. Being hurt by exclusion is not neediness. It is your nervous system reacting to social loss. You are not made to watch yourself disappear from a group and then pretend that didn't affect you. And here's the deeper truth. If someone has decided to keep you outside the circle but refuses to tell you honestly, they are not only withholding inclusion, they are withholding clarity. And that kind of withholding can make you doubt your own instincts, your own memory, your own worth. So no, you do not need to minimize this just because no one said anything cruel out loud. No, you do not need to wait for someone to admit it before trusting what your body already knows. And no, you do not need to keep offering loyalty to spaces that have become comfortable with your absence. Sometimes the most painful part is not that the group went on without you. It's that nobody cared enough to tell you it was happening. And if that is true, then maybe the healing begins when you stop chasing an explanation from people who benefited from your confusion. You deserve relationships where your presence is intentional, where your absence is noticed, where your inclusion is not an afterthought, where honesty exists, even when it is uncomfortable, because belonging should not feel like something you have to decode from breadcrumbs. And friendship should not require you to survive repeated erasure with a smile on your face. If they left you out and left you in the dark, that says something. And what it says is not that you are too much. It may simply mean they were not brave enough, honest enough, or safe enough to love you clearly. Now I really want to hear from you. Tell me in the comments, what was the moment you realized you were being quietly excluded? Was it a photo? A birthday dinner you never heard about? A group trip? A shift in the group chat? A story everyone knew except you? Share your story, because your experience might help another woman finally recognize a pain she has been minimizing for too long. And if this episode spoke to you, like the video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next one.